In the middle of the police academy tryouts, a black woman named Amara walks onto the training ground only to face open mockery from the recruits. The arrogant top recruit, Cole, taunts her publicly. But Amara's quiet confidence and one shocking move flip the energy completely, ending on a cliffhanger that hints at her hidden strength. "You really think they'd let your kind wear this badge?" The words sliced through the early morning air like a blade, leaving a hush over the line of recruits. The training ground smelled of sweat, fresh-cut grass, and stale coffee drifting from the academy's cracked break room door. 30 recruits in navy blue sweats turned to look at her, the lone woman stepping onto the concrete lot, the only black face in a sea of white and tan. Amara's boots crunched the gravel. She didn't flinch at the laughter that bubbled up from the line, that raw, ugly sound that tasted like stale beer and old fear. On the bleachers nearby, a few instructors leaned back, arms crossed, letting it happen. The sky above was a bruised pink, as if it, too, was holding its breath. Cole Westbrook, the self-proclaimed strongest recruit, stepped forward. Broad shoulders, buzz cut, the swagger of someone who'd always been told the world was his. He smirked, flicked a glance at the other recruits, and spat near her boot. "You'll slow us down, sweetheart," he said, voice dripping with fake charm. "Why don't you go file some papers or answer phones? Leave the real work to the big boys." A ripple of laughter. A few nervous eyes darted to the sergeant who watched from the edge but said nothing. The silence of authority, thicker than the fog rolling off the fields. Amara stopped. Her face stayed calm, unreadable as a stone in a river. She looked at Cole, then at his friends. Her eyes flicked down to the academy patch on his chest, Fort Lennox Police Academy, and she let out the faintest smile. Cole stepped closer. He was too close, all broad chest and cheap cologne and stale breath. He leaned in. "Don't smile, girl. You're not staying long enough to—" He didn't finish. Amara moved so fast that the line of recruits gasped as one body. Her hand shot up, palm open, slap. The sound cracked like a gunshot. Cole's head snapped sideways. Silence. Somewhere a raven cawed from the fence. She stepped back, steady. He staggered, a red print blooming on his cheek like an angry flag. "Someone whispered, 'Holy.'" Cole's smirk twisted into something darker. His fists balled up. "You just signed your—" Amara cut him off, voice low, steady, unbothered. "You're right about one thing," she said, loud enough for the whole ground to hear. "I won't be here long. Because after today, I'll be at the top." She turned to the stunned line of recruits. "Who's first?" she asked. Calm, clear, but behind her eyes, something coiled like a loaded spring. Cole's mouth opened, then snapped shut. He stepped back into line, eyes burning holes into the ground. The instructors exchanged glances, suddenly more awake. One recruit, lanky, scared, stepped forward, pointing at the sign-up board behind her. "Yeah, you don't have clearance to—" Amara didn't look at him. She locked eyes with Cole again, her voice slicing through the morning fog. "I heard you're the strongest," she said. "I'll take you first." Cole barked a laugh that sounded like a dying engine. "Lady, you have no idea." Amara's hand shot out again, but this time it wasn't a slap. She gripped the front of his shirt, pulled him forward an inch, just enough for the recruits to feel the tension crackling between them like a live wire. He froze. She leaned in, her whisper a razor. "Neither do you." The instructors were standing now. One of them, Sergeant Halverson, an old man with ice-blue eyes, finally stepped forward. His boots thudded on the concrete. He didn't smile. "Enough," he barked. "Amara Thomas, you want in? Prove it. Take him down. One-on-one now." Cole grinned, shrugging her grip off. "Oh, I will. I'll enjoy this." Amara tilted her head, calm. Her boots scraped the line on the ground. She raised her fists loose. "Let's get this over with." The recruits circled up, breathless, hungry for blood and spectacle. Cole bounced on his heels like a boxer about to knock out a kid brother. The wind stilled. The only sound was a distant dog barking at the sun that hadn't fully risen. Halverson dropped his hand. The signal. Cole lunged. Amara didn't move. Then she did. A blur, a thud, a shocked collective inhale. Cole lay, sprawled in the dirt, staring at the sky. The fight knocked clean out of him. Amara stood over him, breathing steady, her eyes locked on Halverson. He only nodded once, a tiny flick of respect. But the rest? They stared at her like they'd just seen a ghost. And somewhere, deep in the academy's rusted halls, a rumor started that would burn through Fort Lennox like wildfire. "She's not done yet." The smell of disinfectant and damp socks clung to the tempia. Academy's old locker room like a curse that wouldn't wash out. Metal doors slammed, boots scraped the concrete floor, and nervous chatter bounced off cracked white tiles. The pipes overhead hissed and rattled, leaking steam that curled around the rookies like phantom breath. Amara sat alone on the far bench. Her duffel bag rested by her feet, battered leather, frayed strap, just like the edges of her patience. She unlaced her boots slowly, ignoring the stairs reflected in the long mirror running down the back wall. Cole's laughter drifted through the hiss of the showers. He sat on the opposite bench, surrounded by his usual circle, too bulked up. Recruits named Harris and Mendez, both pretending they hadn't seen him sprawled in the dirt an hour ago. "Y'all see that?" Cole barked, his voice too loud, meant for her ears. "Little Princess got lucky. I slipped. Wet concrete, that's all." Harris chuckled but didn't meet his eyes. Mendez just nodded, glancing at Amara like she might sprout claws at any second. Amara pulled her boot free, dropping it with a dull thud. She could feel their words landing on her skin, tiny needles that couldn't pierce deeper than her bones. She'd heard worse. Much worse. Cole slammed his locker shut, the metal bang echoing like a judge's gavel. He turned, his grin sharp and vicious. "She thinks she's gonna be one of us? She wash out, trust me." A girl named Phelps, short, freckled, eyes darting like a trapped bird, looked between Cole and Amara. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but closed it just as fast. She grabbed her towel, slipped toward the showers, her footsteps echoing through the steam. Amara stood, slow and deliberate, tying her loose hair back with a black band. She caught Cole's eyes in the mirror, their reflection side by side. He was taller, bigger, but his eyes flinched first. "You got something to say?" she asked, her voice flat, quiet enough to force him to lean in. Cole's grin faltered, just for a breath. Then it came back nastier. "Just don't get comfortable, Princess. They don't want you here. We don't want you here. Tryouts'll break you, or I will." Amara zipped her bag shut. "Funny thing about wanting," she said, turning to face him, closing the space so the smell of cheap deodorant and arrogance hit her nose. "You want me gone. I want you to try." Harris let out a low whistle. Mendez shifted his weight like he might step in, but didn't. Cole leaned closer, lowering his voice to a hiss. "One slip. One mistake. That's all it takes. They'll toss you so fast you'll forget you were ever here." Amara's eyes flicked down to the fresh bruise on his jaw, the fading echo of her slap. She met his stare again, unblinking. "I don't slip," she said. A sharp whistle cut through the tension. Sergeant Halverson appeared in the doorway, clipboard under his arm. His eyes scanned the room like searchlights. "Tryouts resume in 5. Form up on the yard. Anyone late is done? Understand?" "Yes, Sergeant." They chorused, the old training echo they drilled into their bones. Halverson's eyes lingered on Amara, and for a split second, the ghost of a smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Then it was gone. He turned on his heel and vanished down the hall. Cole shoved past Amara, shoulder slamming hers harder than necessary. She didn't budge. His boots thudded toward the showers, muttering curses under his breath. Left alone, Amara sat back down. She pulled out her phone, an old cracked screen, a single photo taped to the back. A little girl in her Sunday best, braids neat, missing front tooth grinning wide. Her sister. The reason she was here. She exhaled, steadying her hands. She could still hear them. The whispers, the slurs half swallowed, the laughter that came like clockwork whenever someone like her dared to stand taller than they allowed. Above the lockers, an old motivational poster peeled at the corners. No weakness, no mercy, no fear. She smiled at the irony, tucked her phone away, and stood. Her reflection in the mirror looked right back, bruised maybe, but unbroken. Outside. The yard waited, and so did Cole, and she could feel it already, the cracks forming under the weight of her presence. One by one, they'd crumble. She shouldered her bag, squared her spine, and pushed through the swinging doors. Let them. Whisper. She had work to do. The academy yard had changed overnight. Gone was the flat open space where Cole's pride had hit the dirt. Now, metal scaffolding, climbing nets, rope swings, balance beams, and mud pits carved the ground into a mean maze that chewed up rookies and spat them out half broken. Amara stood at the starting line, her boots digging into the gravel, eyes tracing the course. 50 yards ahead, the first wall loomed, 10 feet high, splintered plywood scarred by boots and sweat. Beyond it, the rope climb twisted up like a snake into the sky. She exhaled through her nose, feeling the rising hum behind her. Recruits stretched, bounced on their heels, pretending not to glance her way. Cole, Harris, and Mendez stood near. The back, heads bowed together like vultures pecking at a secret. Sergeant Halverson paced in front of them, clipboard tucked under one arm, stopwatch in his calloused hand. Obstacle gauntlet. Full run. No skips, no excuses, he barked. You fall, you get up. You stop, you're out. Fastest time earns points. Slowest cleans the latrines all week. A low chuckle rippled through the line. Cole's eyes flicked to Amara, his grin slow and poisonous. Halverson stepped aside. Thomas, he called, front and center. Amara moved up, shoulders squared, boots steady. She could feel every eye on her back, some waiting to see her fail, others pretending not to care if she did. Cole leaned in just close enough for his words to slide under her skin. Don't trip, Princess. She didn't answer. The only reply was the way her fingers curled into fists, then relaxed. 1 heartbeat. 2. Halverson lifted his hand. Go. Amara launched forward, gravel scattering behind her like dry rain. The first wall came fast, her boots pounding the dirt. She hit it at a run, grabbed the top edge, and hauled herself. Up in one clean motion. Splinters scraped her palms, but she didn't feel it. Didn't hear Cole's muttered curse behind her. She dropped to the other side, knees bending to catch the landing. Ahead, the rope climb swayed in the breeze. 20 feet up, a bell waited to be rung. Recruits hit the wall behind her, grunts, curses, the sharp slap of sneakers against wood. Amara grabbed the rope, legs wrapping tight. She climbed hand over hand, her breath steady, eyes locked on the brass bell that glinted in the sun. Below, Cole barreled up the wall, a snarl curling his lip when he saw how far ahead she was. Halfway up, the rope jerked. She glanced down. Harris's fat hands fumbled at the knot near the base. Sabotage, sloppy but desperate. She didn't waste breath cursing him. Instead, she climbed faster, muscles burning, lungs straining. When she reached the bell, She paused, one heartbeat, and slapped it so hard it rang out across the pizza FVTV. Yard like a starting gun. Dirt and sweat stung her eyes as she slid down, boots hitting the ground with a jolt. Next came the balance beams, narrow planks raised over shallow pits of filthy water. One slip and the cold mud would swallow her pride whole. She stepped onto the first plank, arms out for balance, knees bent to catch every tremor of the wood. From behind, Cole's curses spat fire. He hit the rope climb hard, yanking himself up like a man possessed. Amara tuned him out, one foot in front of the other. Below her, the mud pit waited, thick, dark, cold enough to suck the air from your chest. Halfway across, she felt it, a subtle shake in the beam. Harris again, stomping the support pole on the side. Trying to rattle her, Amara crouched low, spreading her weight, eyes locked on the end of the beam. She let the tremors roll through her legs, her bones. When the next jolt came, she sprang forward. 2 steps, 1 leap. She cleared the last plank, landing on solid ground with her heart in her throat. She turned just long enough to see Harris. Slip. His foot skidded off the slick plank, sending him flailing into the pit below with a splash that drew laughter from the sidelines. Amara didn't smile. She didn't waste the breath. She ran. The final stretch was a crawl under barbed wire. Mud clinging to her skin, grit between her teeth. The sun burned her shoulders, but the cold in her gut burned hotter, a memory of every door slammed in her face, every laugh behind her back. She emerged from the crawl, mud streaked across her cheek like war paint. The finish line was a thin, white stripe painted on the dirt. She crossed it at a sprint, gasping, legs trembling but unbowed. Halverson checked his stopwatch, eyebrows rising a fraction. He didn't speak, just scribbled her time down. Behind her, Cole exploded from the SISV. Crawl, mud-soaked, eyes wild. He crossed the line 20 seconds later, breath ragged, fury plain on his face. He locked eyes with her, and for the first time, the grin was gone. Amara wiped the mud from her cheek, breathing heavy but steady. 1 test down, many more to go. Academy's hallways hummed with a quiet tension that stuck to the walls like old paint. Recruits drifted in 2s and 3s, their conversations softening to static when Amara passed. She could feel it, the simmer of resentment, the edge of something unspoken, sharp enough to cut if she let it. Her shoulders ached from the gauntlet run. Bruises bloomed along her ribs like dark flowers she'd never asked for. But she moved steady through the corridor, her duffel bag bumping her hip in rhythm with her boots on the scuffed linoleum. Voices drifted from the rec room, laughter that died too fast when she pushed through the door. Cole sat hunched over a battered foosball table, spinning the rods absent-mindedly while Harris leaned against the vending machine, arms folded, chewing gum too loud. They didn't look at her directly. They didn't have to. The room stank of stale coffee and cheap deodorant, but beneath that, there was the bitter musk of wounded pride. Amara ignored them. She walked to the far corner, where a vending machine flickered its dull yellow light. She fettered a few coins and waited for the clunk of a bottle falling free. When she turned, Cole's eyes finally met hers, dead on, no grin this time. "You think you're something special?" he said, voice too calm, too even. Amara unscrewed the cap of her water bottle. "I think I'm still here." A low chuckle. From Harris. Mendez, half hidden behind a battered couch, didn't bother to look up from his phone. Cole leaned back, his chair creaking. "This place doesn't want you. You know that, right? They'll never let you wear the badge. Doesn't matter how fast you run, or who you drop in the dirt." Amara took a sip, feeling the cold slide down her throat, steadying the heat simmering behind her ribs. "Guess we'll find out." He didn't answer. The silence lingered, thick and stale. She left them there, pushing back through the door. Into the dim hallway. upstairs. The locker room was empty, echoing with the drip of a leaking pipe and the faint squeak of her boots. She dropped her bag on the bench and spun her locker dial. The metal door swung open. Her breath caught Dot inside. Tucked between her spare uniform and folded towel was a scrap of paper. White, ragged edges. No name. She unfolded it with steady fingers. Eyes scanning the words scrawled in thick black marker. Know your place. Below it, taped crudely to the metal shelf, was a single black shoelace, tied into a noose. The drip from the pipe filled the silence. Drip, drip, drip. Amara stared at it. The threat, the message, the cowardice of it. Her pulse thudded once. In her ears, then settled. She didn't flinch. Didn't rip it down immediately. Instead, she sat on the cold bench, elbows on her knees, letting the threat breathe the same stale air she did. She could picture it. Cole's smug whisper in Harris's ear. The nervous shuffle of someone slipping in after hours. The quick, shaky hands tying that knot. Dot. She reached in, tugged the shoelace free. It felt limp in her hand, empty of the power it was supposed to carry. She rolled it tight, stuffed it. In her pocket, she crumpled the note, shoved it deep in her duffel bag, and sat there a moment longer, head bowed, eyes closed. In the darkness behind her eyelids, she saw her sister's smile again, that gap-toothed grin, the one that promised the world could be kinder, if only someone fought for it. Outside the locker room, a muffled laugh echoed, cut short when the door creaked open. Phelps, the jittery recruit with freckles, froze in the doorway when she saw Amara. "Oh, hey, I didn't know you were." Phelps's eyes darted to the open locker, then to Amara's calm face. Amara stood, slamming the metal door shut with a clang that bounced off the tiles. She met Phelps's wide eyes. "Everything good?" Phelps nodded too fast, hugging her arms around her clipboard. "Yeah, just Halverson wants us on the yard for drills." Said 5 minutes. Amara's gaze lingered on Phelps's shoes, mud-caked, laces untied. She wondered if the girl had heard the whispers too, if she'd seen the threats carved into bathroom stalls when no one was looking. "Thanks," Amara said. She slung her bag over her shoulder, boots echoing down the hall behind her. The sun was dipping low, streaking the sky in bruises and fire. Another day down, another line drawn in the dirt, another push against the wall they kept building in front of her. She smiled to herself, small, sharp, unbroken. They'd have to do better than an empty noose. The late afternoon sun hung heavy over the yard, turning sweat into salt that burned fresh cuts raw. Recruits stumbled through drills, boots pounding in ragged unison across cracked pavement. The slap of palm against asphalt echoed with each push-up, each burpee, each punishing sprint. Amara's shirt clung to her spine, sweat dripping from her jaw onto the chalk numbers on the ground. Her arms burned. Her lungs burned, but her mind stayed cold, locked on that locker, the noose, the promise they thought would break her. Fall in. Sergeant Halverson barked, his voice shredding the last threads of the day's heat. They lined up, a crooked row of bruises and breathlessness. Cole shot her a look, equal parts fury and confusion at why she hadn't flinched yet. Harris pretended not to watch her at all, eyes fixed on the ground. Halverson paced down the line, boots crunching gravel, clipboard tapping against his thigh in a slow, steady rhythm. "Tryouts don't care who you are," he said, voice slicing the dusk air. "Don't care where you come from, who your daddy knows, or what color your skin is. You fail, you're out. You break, you're out. That's it." His eyes landed on Amara, a flicker of something there, a quiet measure that made Cole's smug grin slip for a heartbeat. "Thomas, stay back." A ripple ran through the line. Cole's eyebrow twitched, a silent question he'd never dare ask out loud. Halverson dismissed the recruits with a grunt. Boots shuffled off into the growing shadows, low chatter curling up into the cooling sky. Amara waited until the last pair of footsteps faded. Then she stepped forward, standing square in front of him. She could smell the faint tang of stale tobacco. Clinging to his breath, the scent of old leather and sharper truths. Halverson didn't look at her at first. He scribbled something on his clipboard, flipped the page, scribbled again. The silence stretched thin between them, tight as the noose she'd pulled from her locker. "You know they don't want you here," he said at last, voice flat, eyes still on the paper. "I know," she said, his pen stilled. His gaze lifted, pale blue eyes that looked like they'd seen too many fights, too many kids like Cole who grew up thinking the world owed them the sky. "You think you can beat that?" he asked low, like he wasn't entirely sure he wanted. The answer, Amara didn't blink. "I know I can." Halverson's jaw ticked, a muscle jumping near his temple. He closed the clipboard, tapped it twice against his thigh. "Most don't. They come in all fire and talk. 2 weeks later, they're done. Some quit. Some get pushed out. Some get buried so deep in paperwork no one remembers they were ever here." A breeze drifted through the yard, stirring dust at their boots. Somewhere behind the fence, a stray dog barked once, sharp, lonely. Amara shifted her weight, shoulders squared. "I'm not here to be forgotten." Halverson studied her face. His eyes softened, just enough to remind her he was human beneath the bark. He leaned in, voice dropping to a private gravel that carried weight. "Listen to me, Thomas. The system's bigger than this yard. Bigger than Cole and his coward buddies. It's the brass upstairs. The old men who sign off on who stays and who goes. They'll smile at you, shake your hand, and the next day you'll find your name missing from the roll." Amara's mouth twitched, a humorless, almost smile. "So you're telling me to walk?" Halverson barked a short laugh, surprising them both. "Hell no. I'm telling you to watch your back. I'm telling you not to. Let some noose in a locker do the work they're too scared to do in daylight." He stepped back, adjusting the cap on his gray hair. His eyes swept the dark yard, the last gold lines of sun bleeding behind the rusted floodlights. "You want this? You take it. But understand, they'll come harder. They'll dig for dirt. They'll find your cracks and pull till you break." Amara met his eyes without flinching. "They're welcome to try." Halverson's shoulders shifted, the ghost of approval flickering across his face. He tapped the clipboard against his palm once more. "Good. Now get inside. Clean up. Tomorrow's hand-to-hand drills. You think the gauntlet was rough? Wait till Cole gets a free shot." Amara's jaw tightened, but she nodded once, crisp. No wasted breath. As she turned to go, Halverson's voice caught her at the edge of the yard. "Thomas." She paused, turned back. He held her stare. "Don't you dare make it easy for them." For the first time all day, a smile cracked her calm, small but sharp, an ember in the dusk. "I don't break easy, Sergeant." She left him there, alone in the yard, clipboard dangling at his side like a battered shield. Tomorrow would be blood. She'd be ready. The training yard's far corner had been cleared for the day. No obstacles, no fancy equipment, just a wide patch of dry dirt trampled flat by too many boots and bruised egos. A makeshift ring formed by cones and painted lines, nothing to stop the fists but grit and pride. Amara stepped inside the ring, rolling her shoulders to shake off the morning chill. The air smelled like sunburned grass and sweat. Around her, recruits circled up, their faces a mix of hunger and hush, some wanting a show, others praying she'd fail. Cole stood across from her, bouncing on the balls of his feet. His knuckles flexed in and out of fists. His grin was back, wide and loose, a snake showing its fangs. Harris leaned against a fence post just outside the ring, arms folded, eyes glittering like he already knew the ending. Sergeant Halverson watched it. All from a few steps back, clipboard tucked tight under his arm, cap pulled low to shield his eyes from the glare. He gave no speech this time, no rousing words. Just a sharp nod to the two recruits facing off in the dirt. Cole's smirk widened. "Ready to crawl back to wherever you came from, Princess?" Amara said nothing. She tugged her gloves tight. The leather cracked and worn from years of cheap gyms and quieter fights than this. Halverson barked, "No cheap shots. First hit the ground loses, begin." Cole lunged fast for his size, a wrecking ball wrapped in academy blues. His shoulder rammed into Amara's chest, driving her back across the circle, boots scraping the dirt. The ring of recruits shuffled. To keep the boundary tight, hungry for sweat and blood, Amara absorbed the blow, let the momentum roll through her, her boots dragging trenches behind her. Cole's grin flickered. He'd wanted her flat on her back already. "You're soft." He growled into her ear, twisting, trying to trip her legs. "You don't belong here. You never will." Amara shoved back, pivoted her hips, broke his grip. Dust billowed where their boots tore the earth. She darted sideways, low and tight, fists up. Cole lunged again, fists swinging wild, more anger. Then skill. A sharp left hook grazed her jaw, enough to sting, enough to draw a gasp from the circle. Pain bloomed sharp and bright, but she tasted it like iron on her tongue and let it steady her heartbeat. Cole's laugh came too loud. One slip, she ducked his neck swing, buried her shoulder into his ribs, driving him back. The recruits parted just enough to keep clear, but no one looked away. They'd waited for this, to see if the girl who slapped him down could do it when fists replaced words. Cole landed a solid hit to her side, air knocked from her lungs, but her feet stayed planted. She gripped his sleeve, yanked him forward, turned with the pull. His weight stumbled into her trap. She struck. Elbow to the gut, then a fast, savage knee that made him grunt and double over. The circle buzzed, shifting closer. Cole backed off, spitting dust, his grin gone, replaced by a snarl of teeth and raw hate. "You think you're better than me?" Amara steadied her breath, eyes locked on his. "I don't think." "I prove." He charged again, clumsy now, brute force without balance. She let him close the gap, felt the slap of his fists against her forearms as she blocked, shifted, let him burn his rage into empty air. Then she stepped in. One step, one breath. Her fist found his jaw, clean and sharp. Bone met bone. The crack echoed in the hush. Cole's head snapped sideways, spit flying into the dirt. His knees wobbled. He caught himself, barely. Gasps rippled through the circle. Harris cursed under his breath, but no one moved to help. Cole's eyes flicked to Halverson, desperate for a break, a call, an excuse to step out with pride intact. Halverson didn't flinch, just watched. Amara could feel the shift, the fear behind Cole's eyes, the cracks running through the armor he'd wrapped himself in since the first day someone told him he was the strongest. She closed in, fists loose, voice low enough for only him to hear. "Hit the ground, Cole, or I'll put you there." He swung wild, rage overriding sense. She sidestepped, hooked his leg with hers, turned her hips, and drove her shoulder into his chest. The world tilted for him, boots overhead, dirt in. His teeth. He hit the ground with a flat thud that punched the air from his lungs. Silence swallowed the yard. The recruit's circle froze, caught between disbelief and the slow, creeping awe that always follows a toppled bully. Amara stepped back, chest heaving, jaw throbbing where his fist had landed. She looked down at him. Cole, the biggest, the strongest, sprawled in the dirt at her feet. Halverson gave a sharp nod. "Winner, Thomas." No cheer, no roar. Just a hush, the first crack of respect, grudging and heavy in the air. Amara turned away without a word. pushing through the circle as they parted for her like water around a stone. Behind her, Cole coughed, spitting grit and pride onto the training ground that had never looked so small. The Academy's admin wing felt like another planet, far from the mud, the sweat, the cracked concrete where fists met bone and pride met dirt. Here, the air was too clean, the carpet too soft, the fluorescent lights too bright. The smell of polished wood and stale coffee hung in the silence. Amara's boots squeaked on the marble-tiled corridor. Every step echoed, reminding her she was deep inside the part of the building recruits only saw when something went wrong, or when someone wanted to remind them who really held the keys. A receptionist with stiff hair and a forced smile pointed her to an oak door at the end of the hall. A brass nameplate caught the light, Captain Rollins. Beneath it, a tiny engraved slogan, Service, Strength, Honor. She almost laughed at that dot inside. The office was too warm. Bookcases lined the walls, framed commendations, old photos of graduates shaking hands. A blue flag draped perfectly behind the heavy mahogany desk. Captain Rollins sat behind it, back straight, hands folded over a neat stack of papers. He looked up when she entered. A small, sharp smile creased his clean-shaven face. His hair was iron gray, trimmed to regulation perfection. "Thomas, sit." Amara sat, spine straight, boots flat on the carpet that probably cost more than her month's rent. Rollins flipped through the papers, eyes flicking over whatever file they'd pieced together about her. He clicked his pen twice before setting it down just so. The silence stretched, thick as molasses. "You've made quite an impression, Recruit Thomas." She said nothing. Let him lead. Let him show his cards first. He tapped the file. Top scores on physical. Faster obstacle time than most second years. And yesterday, hand to hand, you dropped our best. That's not nothing. Thank you. Sir. He raised an eyebrow at her flat tone. But you understand this place isn't just sweat and bruises. We mold officers who represent this city. Reputation matters. Discipline. Respect for the hierarchy. Amara held his gaze. Understood? Rollins leaned back, steepling his fingers. I hear there's been tension, locker incidents, some bad blood. Is there something you want to tell me, Thomas? She saw it then, the trap door in his polite voice. The hidden question, are you a problem we need to get rid of? No, sir, nothing I can't handle. His smile widened, but his eyes didn't. Good, because the press loves stories. And we don't need any stories about discrimination or harassment staining this academy's reputation. Understand? She nodded. Yes, sir. He leaned forward, voice softer now, the serpent sliding closer. There's a way these things go. Some recruits, they come in all fire and defiance. They make enemies they can't see. And then they wash out, quietly. Nobody remembers their name. Nobody writes headlines. Amara's jaw ticked, but she kept her voice even. I plan on staying, sir. Rollins sighed, an exaggerated breath that made the silence in the room heavier. He picked up his pen, twirling it between manicured fingers. I'm offering you an alternative. Your file says you did a semester of criminal justice, this clerical work. Civil liaison units, safe postings, behind a desk, good pension. You'd be valuable there. She almost laughed, but the tightness in her chest made the sound come out like a short exhale instead. I didn't come here for a desk, she said. Rollins's smile vanished. Just like that. He set the pen down with a soft click that sounded like a final verdict. Then I hope you're ready for what comes next. The instructors can't protect you forever. If you stumble, even once, I can't guarantee you'll be standing here again. Amara leaned in, meeting him inch for inch across the polished wood. Then I won't stumble. A flicker of something passed behind his eyes. Surprise? Annoyance? She couldn't tell. His fingers drummed the desk twice before he pushed. Her file aside. Dismissed. Amara stood. She didn't salute. Not yet. Not until she earned it properly. She turned, boots scraping the expensive carpet, her own reflection catching in the framed glass of old-class photos on the wall. At the door, she paused, just enough to feel him watching. Thank you for your time. Sir, she said, voice calm as a blade. She didn't wait for an answer. The door closed behind her with a soft click that felt louder than any shout in the yard. Outside the office, the receptionist pretended not to look up. Amara walked down that silent hall, her boots marking each step with the same steady rhythm. She'd carried since day one. The marble floor gleamed under her boots, but she could feel the cracks underneath. They'd tried the friendly handshake, the fake safety net. Now they'd come with sharper claws. Let them. The night air clung heavy to the academy yard, thick with sweat and cigarette smoke drifting from the far fence line where instructors stood half-hidden in shadow. Overhead floodlights cast harsh cones that cut the darkness into slices of white and black. Amara crouched in the dirt, boots caked in dry mud, palms pressed against the ground to steady her breath. Around her, the other recruits formed scattered clumps, some silent, some muttering complaints that vanished in the hum of the floodlights. Cole stood a few feet away, whispering something to Harris. His laugh cut through the night like a blade. Scraping glass, sharp, mean, echoing off the rusted fence. Harris smirked, nodding, shoulders rolling back with the confidence of a man who thought darkness made him untouchable. Sergeant Halverson paced along the front of the line, flashlight beam cutting across sweaty faces. His voice rasped like gravel, dragged across concrete. Tonight's lesson is simple. Trust the one beside you, or don't bother showing up tomorrow. Someone behind Amara stifled a groan. Another rookie, barely 18, wiped sweat off his brow with a trembling wrist. Halverson's boots stopped in front of Amara. His flashlight beam caught her square in the eyes, blinding for a heartbeat before he angled it down. Thomas, he barked. Yes, Sergeant. He leaned close, voice low enough for only her to catch. Stay sharp tonight. She nodded once enough. He moved on, barking instructions, splitting them into pairs for a buddy carry drill across the uneven yard. Cole's voice rose over. The mutters. I'll take the princess. Halverson didn't argue, didn't even glance back, just waved his hand. Fine. Thomas and Cole. Pair up. The recruits shifted, forming their pairs in the glare of the floodlights. Amara stood, brushing dirt off her knees. Cole strolled over, smile slick as oil. Hope you're ready to carry dead weight, princess. She stared at him. Hope you're ready to be dead weight. A few recruits snickered, but fell quiet. When Cole's eyes snapped their way, Halverson raised his arm, flashlight beam stabbing the dark sky like a flare. On my mark, 1 lap, full yard. No drops. If your partner hits dirt, you start over. A pause, the thick, electric silence before a storm breaks. Go. Cole lunged forward, looping an arm under Amara's legs before she could counter. He hauled her up onto his shoulder, more brute show than form. The sudden lift knocked the air from her lungs. She braced one hand on his back to keep from smashing her face into the gravel. His breath came harsh and close to her ear. Dead. Weight looks good on you. She could smell his sweat, sour with adrenaline. His boots pounded the dirt, each step jarring her spine. He was running too hard, too fast, burning out before the halfway point, trying to prove a point with his raw strength alone. They rounded the fence, the yard falling into darkness between the islands of floodlight. Cole's pace stuttered. His shoulder dipped. Amara shifted her weight deliberately, forcing him to adjust or drop her. She could feel his rage humming under his skin, the tremor in his arms. Drop me, she said, low and sharp. Do it. See who starts over, Cole hissed between his teeth. Shut up. He stumbled, boots slipping in a patch of loose dirt. She grabbed his collar to keep from crashing down on her side. Pain shot through her hip where his elbow jammed it. He steadied, breath ragged. They came into the light again, Halverson's silhouette waiting near the line, clipboard in hand. Behind them, the other pairs grunted and staggered, cursing through clenched teeth. Harris trailed behind, dragging his smaller partner with sloppy balance. Cole's boots found the edge of the yard. He lurched to a stop, sweat dripping onto her sleeve. He let her down rough, and her boots hit the dirt solid. Her feet barely found the ground before he shoved her chest with both hands, just enough to knock her back a step. Next round. You're carrying me, princess, he spat, loud enough for others to hear. Amara's fists balled at her sides. She heard someone step. Closer, a voice she didn't expect. Back off, Cole. It was Phelps, freckled face pale in the harsh light, eyes darting between them. Her voice trembled, but her boots didn't move. Cole sneered. Stay out of it, Phelps. You want to carry her too? Harris drifted up behind Cole, smirking. But around them, other recruits were watching. Mendez, the rookie who'd slipped on the balance beam, the young one who'd tripped in the mud pit. They watched Amara, and then they looked at Cole. The line was drawn right there in the dirt, clearer than chalk. Amara stepped forward, shoulder brushing Phelps's. She looked Cole dead in the eye. Next round, you'll need both of them to carry what's left of you. For the first time, Cole didn't have an answer. Halverson's whistle sliced the tension. Next pairs, switch. Phelps fell in beside Amara without asking. She didn't look strong, but her shoulder squared beside Amara's was enough. The night hummed on, floodlights buzzing, boots pounding dirt dot, and in that circle of grit and sweat, Amara felt it. The weight shifting. Fear cracking. One pair of boots at a time. The dawn cracked open over the yard like an old wound, pink and raw around the edges. The recruits stood in loose rows, shoulders sagging under the weight of sleepless nights and bruises they couldn't hide. Breath turned to mist in the cold air, swirling above muddy boots. Amara flexed her hands, feeling the raw scrapes under her gloves. The whispers behind her barely bothered her now, the half-mumbled threats, the sideways glares. She'd seen where they ended, in dirt, in silence, in fear that never quite reached her spine. Sergeant Halverson's voice barked through the morning hush. Endurance run. 5 miles. Weighted packs. You fall out, you pack your bag, and you're done. Cole stood 2 rows over, tightening the straps of his pack with deliberate jerks. Harris gave him a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Phelps, beside Amara, checked her laces twice, knuckles white against the cold. Halverson's whistle cut through the frost. The pack hit Amara's shoulders like a blow, 40 pounds of sand and iron and old spite pressing her down as her boots bit the gravel. The recruits surged forward in a ragged pack. The yard dropped away behind them, replaced by the dirt trail that snaked behind the academy, through sparse woods and shallow ravines that turned to rivers of mud after last night's rain. Amara settled into her pace, slow, steady, letting. Her breath set the rhythm. Gravel crunched under her boots. Frost-laced weeds slapped against her calves. Somewhere ahead, Cole's shoulders bobbed, pushing the front, showing off. A mile in, Harris dropped back, matching her stride. He jogged too close, pack brushing hers. Breath ragged but grin steady. Long run for someone carrying so much dead hope, he panted. Amara ignored him. Focused on the trail, the twist ahead where the trees thickened, shadows swallowing the early sun. Harris bumped her pack, a deliberate shove. Her boot caught a hidden root, her ankle rolled. Pain shot up her leg, a hot twist she bit back. Before it could crawl up her throat, She stumbled but didn't fall. She righted her pack, found her balance, eyes locked forward. Harris snorted. "Careful, Princess." Long way down. Ahead, Cole slowed just enough to glance back, eyes glinting under his brow like a snake watching prey limp. The trail narrowed, banks rising on either side, brambles clawing at sleeves. Phelps appeared at her shoulder, breath harsh. "You." "Good," she wheezed. "Fine." The next bend turned into a shallow dip, rainwater pooled at the bottom, slick and freezing. Cole plowed through it, boots slapping muddy water up to his calves. He turned, walking backward for a moment, grin wide, arms spread like he was welcoming her to fail. Amara kept moving, pain flaring at every uneven step, pack straps digging trenches into her shoulders. Her breath burned. But her pulse stayed steady, her heartbeat not a drumbeat of fear anymore, but a quiet, stubborn hammer. "I stay. I stay. I stay." Cole waited just past the dip, hands on hips, pretending to catch his breath. Harris fell back again, just behind Amara and Phelps. His hand brushed her pack strap, a tug, hard, sudden. The world pitched forward. Her boots slipped on slick mud. She hit her knees. Cold water soaked her cuffs, sent shock up her spine. Her teeth clicked together, copper on her tongue. Laughter, quiet, sharp. Cole's echo across the trees. "Pack it up, Princess," Harris hissed. No shame in knowing when to quit. Phelps's hand found her elbow, pulling her upright. Amara's knee howled in protest, mud dripping from her chin. "No shame at all," Amara rasped. She shifted her weight, planting one boot deep in the sludge. Her other foot came up, heel caught Harris's shin hard. He yelped, lost his balance, slipped backward into the shallow pool with a splash that stole Cole's grin for half a heartbeat. Amara pushed forward, limping at first, then finding her pace. Phelps fell in beside her, her breath ragged, eyes wide. "You're bleeding," Phelps said. Amara wiped the smear from her lip with the back of her glove. "Good, let him see it." They pushed up the trail, the final mile a brutal climb over gravel and roots. Cole tried once more, cutting back toward them on a switchback, boots pounding too close. Amara squared her shoulders. This time, he didn't touch her, just brushed past close enough for his shoulder to dig a bruise into her arm. She kept moving. Past the ridge, past the sting in her knee, past every word they'd thrown at her like stones. When the yard came back into view, the pale shape of Halverson's cap near the fence line, Amara didn't slow. She crossed the line at a limp run, Phelps right behind her, her own pack bouncing loose. Cole arrived seconds later, boots slamming dirt, jaw tight enough to crack. Halverson's eyes flicked over them, the mud, the blood, the raw edges. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't need to. He just checked the time on his watch, voice low enough only Amara could hear when she stepped past. "You break?" Amara's breath caught in her throat, not from the run, but from the truth in her chest. "Not today, Sergeant." He nodded once, the faintest flicker of something, like pride in the corner of his tired eyes. "Not today." The morning sun poured down like fresh gold on the courtyard, too bright for the tension coiled behind the stiff rows of fresh uniforms and polished boots. The recruits stood shoulder to shoulder, badges pinned but not yet earned, eyes forward under brims that cut harsh shadows across their faces. Amara felt the fabric of her pressed blues cling to the faint bruises still healing. Beneath, the knot of her tie dug into the base of her throat, a tight, perfect line that told the world she belonged here, even if the world still whispered otherwise. Cole stood 4 spots down the line, chin high, jaw still carrying the faint yellow bloom of the fight he'd lost and the run he'd tried to ruin. He hadn't spoken to her since that morning on the trail. Harris was gone. His bunk cleared out 2 days ago, no explanations given. His locker stripped air as if he'd never existed. Phelps shifted next to her, shoulder brushing hers. The freckles across her nose were half hidden under her caps. Shadow, but the quick side glance she shot Amara said enough. We're here. We made it. A podium scraped across the concrete. Captain Rollins stepped up to it, the brass on his chest catching sunbeams like they were trophies instead of shields. He cleared his throat, voice carrying through the courtyard like oil over. Water. You stand here because you didn't break. You stand here because you proved you could take the worst this academy throws at you and still come back at dawn hungry for more. His eyes swept the line, cold, calculating. They paused. On Amara for half a second. She didn't blink. He went on, praising sacrifice, discipline, tradition, the words polished and hollow, bouncing off the concrete and echoing in the chests of parents gathered along the fence line. Some clapped politely, their eyes glazing. Over in the morning heat, Amara didn't hear most of it. Her heartbeat thudded under her collar, steady low. She thought of the locker room's hissed threats, the mud on the trail, the bruises she'd iced alone at night, the note she'd burned in her bathroom sink while the building slept. She thought of her sister's old photograph tucked deep in her duffel, the last thing she'd see when she packed up tonight, to leave this courtyard behind. Rollins raised a hand, the cue for the line to step forward, one by one. Badges pinned for real now. A handshake. A photograph. A name spoken into the air where it could never be erased. Cole stepped up first, grin wide enough for the press photographers. His mother's shaky phone pointed at him like a lifeline. Rollins pinned the badge, the two men smiling for the shutters flashed. Next. Phelps. Her shoulders trembled when Rollins' hand brushed hers, but her eyes shone when the badge caught the sun. She stepped back in line, a tiny smile ghosting over her lips when she met Amara's glance. Then it was Amara's turn. She stepped up, boots crisp against the concrete. Rollins' smile flickered at the edges, the muscle near his jaw twitching. When he fixed the pin to her chest, he leaned in, voice low enough that the crowd wouldn't hear but the meaning would still cut. Don't embarrass us. Amara's eyes didn't flinch. Try harder. She stepped back. The camera clicked. Somewhere in the fence line, a kid, too young to understand all this, clapped and whooped before his mother hushed him. The line reformed. Halverson stood to the side now, arms folded, eyes narrowed in the sun. He gave her the smallest nod, almost hidden under the brim of his cap. When it was done, the last name called, the last badge pinned, the recruits broke formation for the first time in weeks. Some hugged families they'd barely called. Some vanished behind tearful mothers and proud fathers. Some, like Cole, soaked in every handshake like it was proof the world still spun around them. Amara found a shadowed corner by the courtyard wall. She leaned back against the sun-warmed brick, fingers brushing the badge that sat heavy over her heartbeat. Phelps appeared beside her, two plastic cups in hand, cheap punch from the folding table near the fence. She offered one with a shy grin. You look like you needed a drink. Amara took it, the cold sweetness of fake fruit punch grounding her more than the ceremony had. She tipped the cup toward Phelps. Thanks. Phelps nudged her shoulder. They'll talk, they'll watch. But they can't say you didn't earn it. Amara didn't answer, not at first. She looked past the fence where the city shimmered under the noon sun. Streets she'd patrol soon enough, calls she'd answer, doors she'd knock on with a badge that half the world would trust, and half the world would watch like a threat. They'll remember, she said finally. That's enough. She finished her drink, the sugar clinging to the back of her throat like a promise she'd never swallow whole. Behind her, the courtyard buzzed with laughter, gossip, congratulations, the noise of people pretending that fight was over just because the photos were taken. Amara touched the badge. Once more, cold metal warming under her fingers. Not broken. Not done. Just getting started.